Okay, in this problem, the functions f and g are shown below. F is given in red and g is given in blue. We can see they're piecewise piecewise linear functions. That means on pieces they're linear. All right, what we're trying to find is the derivative of u prime at the number 1. But what is u? U is given as being the function f times g. So u of x is equal to f of x times g of x. And what we're going to do is find the derivative by using the product rule. So the product rule says that if I have f of x times g of x, and I take the derivative, I have the derivative of f times g plus f of x times the derivative of g. Just as I'm showing here, f prime g plus f g prime. That's the product rule. Now, if I put in 1, I get f prime of 1, g of 1, plus f of 1, g prime of 1. Let's make a list of what f of 1 is, what f prime of 1 is. Let's write down g of 1 and g prime of 1. Now, f of 1 is the y value of f when x is equal to 1. I look at x equals 1, and I see that the y value is 2. Now, the next one's a little more tricky. The derivative at 1 is the slope of the function. The derivative is the slope of the tangent line, but because f is a straight line at x equals 1, the line f at x equals 1 is the same as the tangent line. So the slope of the tangent line is equal to the derivative. And what's the slope? Well, we can find the slope by the formula of rise over run for slope. That's the slope formula. So for the slope formula, we look at rise over run. And we see that goes up by 2, to the right by 1. We go up by 2 and to the right by 1. For f to go from one point on the graph to another point in the graph, the ratio of rise to run is 2 to 1. So we have the f prime is 2. Now for g of 1, see, I need to fill in f of 1, f prime of 1, g of 1, and g prime of 1. So for g of 1, I am now going to focus on the blue graph, and we see when x is 1, y is 1 on the blue graph. And for the derivative, again, I look at the slope. This time for the blue graph. This time for g, to go from one point to another, starting when x is 1, I have to go down 1 and then to the right 1 to get to the next point. So that's negative 1 over 1, and that's negative 1. Now if I plug those values in here, what do I get? I get that u prime of 1 is equal to 2 times 1 plus 2 times negative 1, and that gives 0. So that is the answer to that problem, part A. 0. Okay? Could even make it better like this. U prime of 1 is equal to 0. Got that answer. Okay, now let's go to part B, which isn't really that much different, except this time we're going to use the quotient rule when we find the derivative. What we have is that v of x is equal to f of x divided by g of x. All right, and we're going to use the quotient rule. So v prime of x is equal to, well, I'm using the quotient rule. So it's f of x divided by g of x prime. And what's the quotient rule say? It says I take the derivative of f, and then the numerator, whatever's in the numerator, take that derivative, then I multiply by the function in the denominator, less I have the numerator times the derivative of the denominator. Then I draw a line, have a bar there, whatever we call it, a fraction, division, the denominator squared. That's the quotient rule, okay? And then, if I want to find v prime of 1, I fill in wherever I see x, I put the number 1. Alrighty. The work, a lot of the work's already done here because of looking at what I have above. Somehow that I wrote above looks sort of small, but anyway, I have all this stuff above, and I'm just going to fill all that stuff in there. Okay, I have g of 1, I have f prime of 1, I did all that, which is, that was something. There was a little bit of work there. So that's a big part of the problem, actually, is understanding how to do those. All right, so f prime of 1, as I read above, says it's 2. G of 1 is 1 minus f of 1, which is 2. G prime of 1 is negative 1. And I divide by g of 1 squared. Oh man, almost running out of room here. Divide by g of 1 squared. What's g of 1? Oh, g of 1's 1. Is g of 1 really 1? Yeah, I guess it is. Okay. So the denominator is just 1 squared. So therefore I get 2 plus 2 divided by 1. And that's 4. So I'm going to write down that v prime of 1 is equal to 4. And that's it. All right. So we had some practice with the product rule, and we had practice with the quotient rule. And what else did we do here? We had to understand the idea that if you have a line, then the derivative of that line is the slope of the line. All right, and we practiced finding the slope, which is rise over run. All right, so maybe I'll just highlight here what the quotient rule and the product rule are. So quotient rule and product rule, and therefore we were able to solve the problem. Okay, so that's all.